Hiya has just the right thing for a judge. Here's your look at the Hiya Toys Judge Dredd Exquisite Mini, Judge Anderson, and Lawmaster Mark II. Exquisite Mini is a new standard setting series for 1/18th scale, featuring super articulation action figures from Hiya Toys. Now, just before we look at another judge from Hiya, I'd like to first thank the folks over at Hiya Toys that were kind enough to provide this sample of the Judge Dredd Exquisite Mini, Judge Anderson, and Lawmaster 2. For anyone that was taking a tally, we've already had a look at Judge Dredd and his Lawmaster. Of course, I will be bringing those bikes in for comparisons in a second. I'll also be bringing in Judge Dredd for a comparison in a second. But I did also want to, of course, measure off, just see how tall Judge Anderson stands. In this case, you're looking at the figure being about 4 inches in height, or the figure's going to be about 10 centimeters tall. Then on to the Lawmaster, as we did do before when we had a look at Judge Dredd. I'm going to go from the front of the barrel to the back of the bike. Based on that, you're looking at the bike being about 6 inches, exactly, actually 6 inches in length, or it's going to be 15.5 centimeters long. And as for your required comparisons, I did, of course, want to bring in the Judge Dredd that we had looked at earlier. What was funny about the Judge Dredd, not ha-ha funny, was the fact that the colors that they've done now for Judge Anderson seem the more softer colors that were included with the initial Judge Dredd. Just to, of course, bring that Judge Dredd in right now so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. The color's, of course, a little bit of a darker green this time around for Anderson, but yeah, she doesn't have the shinier green plastic that this Judge Dredd had that came included with his bike. Of course, as well, I wanted to bring in the original Judge Anderson. You can see what I'm talking about here. In fact, to look at the figures, just based on, of course, solely on the ones that I have in front of me here, it's almost like a case where this Judge Anderson that was sold separately almost pairs better with the Judge Dredd that was then sold along with his bike. And then on the other end of that, the Judge Anderson that comes included with the Mark II bike, Lawmaster, seems almost be better paired along with Judge Dredd that we got packaged before. And of course, if you guys did want to see what the bikes look like, I guess what I will do is I'll just move these other figures out of the way for right now. Here's, of course, Anderson's bike, and of course we will then bring in Judge Dredd's bike. The bikes will be exactly the same to one another. It doesn't look like there's anything that's necessarily different or changed from one bike to the next. They are exactly the same. Of course, we'll get more down to the details in a second. In a second. I keep saying in a second. Actually, just before we look at the accessories, which I'll look at in a second. The one thing I did also want to draw your attention to is the fact that this time around, and it might have also been the case when we looked at Judge Dredd and I just maybe wasn't packed along with mine, is that when I did do the review, I think, of Judge Dredd, I had made mention that the figure didn't come included with the display stand, something that we always get with Hiya Toys releases. Sure enough, Anderson, while I was actually pulling the tray out, you may have even noticed that this fell out the back of this. You get yourself the actual display stand. And not only do you get the display stand, but you also get included with that the eye brackets that will then pair multiple display stands together. Maybe it's just the case that Anderson would have been the only one that came included with the stand. May have also been just the case as well that my Judge Dredd just never got packaged along with it. If you happen to have gotten to Judge Dredd, let me know down below in the comment section if your figure had included the display stand. For right now, at least, I've just got it actually just bagged still. I don't have really a plan for right now of having this being used with Judge Anderson, just because, again, like, she's got the bike included with her anyways. But I will, of course, be using that with the other Judge Dredd figures. Or, I mean, really, too, you don't have to necessarily use it with Dredd. You could use it with any one of the other Exquisite Minis. Perhaps you could use it with a Predator, for example, seeing as there's some skull and remaining bones. Maybe I'll just end up doing that. Though now on to the accessories. The figure, first of all, comes included with a baton. The baton, this time around, I just wanted to bring in the one that came included with Judge Dredd, seems to be exactly the same. More that darker kind of gunmetal gray. They've painted off the handle area of the baton. And just to bring back in the original baton that we got from the first Judge Dredd or first Anderson, both of them were actually much more of a silver color. They have since muted the colors of the gray, giving us a much more darker gunmetal gray. I actually like the darker gray myself rather than a shinier silver. The figure, of course, as being a judge, comes included with the Lawgiver. The Lawgiver is no different than the one that we did get before. I'm just going to bring that one in right now. I think this was the one that came included with Judge Dredd, not that it really matters. They're all usually using the same anyways. The shinier look of the plastic may vary from one to the other, but at the end of the day, they're essentially all the same Lawgivers. The Lawgiver does attach, of course, inside of her hand. She does have also the same sort of style of hands as Judge Dredd, just a little bit more smaller. But if you wanted to, you could certainly just out of box easily have the figure displayed with the lawgiver without actually having to swap anything out when it comes to interchangeable hands. Also is the case as well. You can take the lawgiver, and you can holster it on the back of her leg, at the bottom of her leg. Just holster it down right there. There's an actual open slot at the front of it that conveniently then holds the clip at the top of the gun. So there's a storage place, of course, to store that. Then the figure also finally does come include some gripping hands. One such hand happens to be one that has a trigger firing finger, while the other one has a little bit more of a bigger grip than she currently has right now. But it's not to say that you could easily just use the existing hands. I have had the figure holding both the baton and the gun fine without really even having to change the hands out in the first place. Those are all the accessories, and then of course the one thing also that she comes included with as well is the Lawmaster Mark II. I suppose what we will do is look at that then. Say it again second. But first, let's actually pick the figure up here. One thing I did also want to draw your attention to is the cleaner looking lines, the cleaner, more defined face that we get here with Anderson. That maybe wasn't the case before. She had much more blonder hair, granted, on the original release, much more rosier face. But I feel like the features are a little finer, even though it's essentially the exact same face. The bodies are also shared the same, although the original one would have had a little bit more of a gold color. This is a little bit more of a softer gold that they would have painted both the shoulder pads. Of course, she does have the large eagle shoulder pad on the one side and the Donkey Kong barrel on the other. It's not really for Donkey Kong. And of course, she does have still both the same badges there on the front. This is a little harder to see, but of course it's a very large badge. And I think I should say Anderson. I just can't quite make it out. My eyes are going on me, of course, as I get a little bit older. She does have also the little belt buckle there on the front. I say little, it's not so little. And of course, many pockets making up the majority of her belt. So while it is pretty much still the same figure as we got before, I will say like the colors seem a little more softer and better approached. I prefer myself to have the lighter blonde hair also. The other one maybe had a little more of an artificial paint look to it, whereas I think this one looks a little bit cleaner. I think she just better painted, if you ask me. Articulation on Anderson will be exactly the same. Whereas the case before, Judge Dredd would have had articulation more at the base of the neck, and then the neck was all attached to the head. Anderson, on the other hand, does actually have a ball joint in her head, so you can rotate it independently on its own. The head rotates all the way around, of course. You can hinge it up, down, back, and also forward. Arms are also always going to be a problem whether you have a smaller frame or not. The shoulder pads just being as big as they are, they're going to cause a real big problem when it comes to the figure being able to rotate the arms forward and back, but it certainly gives you enough at least when it comes to putting the figure sitting her down inside her bike. She more than has the capabilities of actually being able to sit and hold the handlebars. The figure's arms do hinge out. Again, you're only going to be getting a little bit of mileage when it comes to those. I noticed on mine, at least, the shoulders are really tight on this one side, maybe not as tight on the other. She also has really large elbow pads, which does cause problems when it comes to elbow bends, for example, just because like the shoulder pads, the elbow pads keep frequently sliding down to the forearm. And if you go to try to bend the elbow, for example, you have to then realize, oh, wait, I've got an elbow pad in the way. Just want to push that back up. And then you can easily clear a joint, as small as of a joint as it is. You can at least then bend the elbow. Hands rotate all the way around. No problems there. Upper torso is on a ball joint. Lower torso is, I would say, in a much more generous ball joint. The legs do split out. You can bring them forward, bring them back. So swivel at the top of the thigh. Single hinge only in the knee. Actually, it's double hinge on the knee for Anderson here. And articulation for the ankle, both up and down this way, and rock back and forth this way as well. What I will do is do the same as I did before with Judge Dredd. I'm going to just unholster the lawgiver. Going to put that to the side. Because, of course, I will be putting her down on top of the bike. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to knock the lawgiver out of her holster in the process. On to now the bike. And the bike is, again, the price of entry right here, I would say, is the bike. The bike looks fantastic. No real different than actually the one that we get from Judge Dredd, so I'm just going to bring back in Judge Dredd so you can see the difference between the two. It doesn't look to be the case that the bikes are any bit different from one to the other. The crest, the eagle crest, is the exact same on the front, as well as the stars and stripe crest down below is also the same. Control pad seems to be identical. The colors are all, again, matching the same. Because, again, like this is standard issued stuff that you'd be given to a judge. They'd all be driving around in the same bikes. The undercarriage also sports the same thing, as this one does also have a battery compartment. Inside here is housed AG13 or LR44 batteries. Luckily, Hiya Toys have already installed them. All that's required on then your part is to remove first the plastic restriction tab. Once that's done, of course, then you can switch it from off to on. And then to activate this works the same way as Judge Dredd's. Simply just touch the top. Touch the top will not only turn on and off the front headlight, but also then to flip the bike around, you'll see it inside, which normally would be a readout display. I do kind of wish that they could have put something in there on the front to kind of make it look like they're reading a screen, or there maybe is like a view screen or something in front of them, as opposed to just a solid square, a solid rectangle of light. But at least it does illuminate. And again, it's just a case of pressing the top and just back and forth in order to switch it on and off. There's some articulation, of course, with the bike. You can move the front of it back and forward. It doesn't actually hinder at all the electronics, because again, all the electronics is based in here. There is probably still a wire, because obviously if the battery compartment is here and where its lighting is right here, there's got to be a wire that's running somewhere here, but it doesn't seem to be something that's going to be restricted or cause problems the more you're rotating the bike. Gun turrets are also featured here in the front, none of which do actually move, so don't try to move them. You're only just going to snap the plastic. And you have very large wheels. No kickstand is required this time around because the wheels are just so large. The bike rolls quite easily also as well. And of course, if you guys wanted to see what she looks like on the bike, what we're going to do is I'm just going to drop the legs just slightly, one of the little additional points of articulation that these figures do have. Just enough then to be able to bring the legs forward. We're going to also then bend the knees. And also what I did with Judge Dredd is going to be the same thing I'm going to do with Judge Anderson. I find it's easier, honestly, just to first take the figure and put it on top of the bike with no real rhyme or reason as to how the figure is going to be sitting on the bike. You can always worry about that later. From there, you're going to go ahead and take the figure's hands. Not that I have to really show you guys how to attach a figure's hands to handlebars, but anyways, you're just going to attach and slide the entire hand onto the handlebars. And then from there, you can then always fix the feet and always fix as well the back of the body. Now, the figure, unfortunately, though, she does still have that gap space. Judge Dredd also had the same problem as well. And again, you can get it where the figure is actually sitting on the posts on the front here, the actual stands. But then the problem is always that you kind of have to lean the figure backwards a bit so she's actually literally touching the seat. And that looks good. I mean, it looks fantastic. Let's maybe, in fact, do the exact same thing with Judge Dredd. Let's grab the figure here. Just, of course, bending the knees. We've already had a look at Judge Dredd in his own standalone review. If you haven't had yet the chance to check that out, by the way, give it a gander if you have a little bit of time on your hands. Speaking, though, of hands, once again, we're just going to get Judge Dredd here slid onto the handlebars here. There we go. And, of course, when you got both sides going here, now you've got both judges, Anderson and Dredd, on top of their Lawmaster Mark II. The only thing then left behind is to then turn on the switches. And I had mentioned this in the review of Judge Dredd, and I'll mention this as well in the review of Judge Anderson. I love that they actually found a way to put a light source on and off switch on the top, where I don't have to every single time take this off my shelf, turn it on to turn this on, and then pick it up again to turn it off. In actual fact, you could have this running all the time, and then just simply have to go then up to the bike and press the top headlight to turn them either off or on. A nice looking set, though. Not still disappointed by the fact that we already did get these technically as single releases anyways. We already did get the Judge Anderson. We already did get, of course, Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd and Judge Anderson I'll probably have likely still paired together. And maybe why not? I'll make use of that display stand that came packaged along with Anderson that still, unfortunately, just never was packaged along with at least the Judge Dredd that I did get. And of course, then I'll have the other two judges on top of their bikes. Nice set, nice real set from the folks over at Hiya Toys. I think even if you didn't get the chance to get the single released judges, get them now and get them along with their bikes. The bikes do bring a little bit more pizzazz, certainly when it comes to displaying them on the shelf. There's more shelf appeal, I feel. The fact that you've now got both the judges, Dredd and Anderson, riding around mega city streets on their bikes. BTW, Judge Anderson, by the way, and Lawmaster Mark II is slated to release August of 2023 for $69.99. Just to put that in proper perspective, Judge Anderson on her own sells for $19.99. So there's about a difference of, what, $40 just to get included the bike. I think, though, well worth it. You can't have a judge, whether it be Anderson or Dredd, not getting around the city streets of Mega City without, of course, their trusty Lawmaster Mark II. Both the Lawmasters are exactly the same, Anderson's and Dredd's. The colors, of course, are exactly the same, and they both feature the light-up options of the headlight and the back display. Still, though, wish that the back display could have had something on it. Maybe they could have included like a sticker, for example, so it would have actually had some readout, as opposed to just being a bright white rectangle, similar to the one that's actually the headlight on the front of the bike. But I love the look of the bike. It would have been neat as well if they could have found a way to incorporate sound effects, but like really, do we need sound effects? That's only just an wishful thinking on the person's part behind the camera. But still, all in all though, for a $70 release from Hiya Toys, the fact that you get yourself an exquisite mini of Judge Anderson, and as well you get yourself as well the Lawmaster Mark II, I think it's a set well worth picking up if you can find it. Again, big thank you once again to the folks over at Hiya Toys that did provide this sample of the brand new Judge Anderson along with the Lawmaster Mark II set. What do you guys think of it? Let me know down below in the comments section, and could you see yourselves wanting to pick this up for yourselves? As well, if you enjoyed the video, want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and you want to be on board for more, if you haven't already, if you haven't, that is, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. That notification, I know it seems like I dribble on and on at the end of these reviews and always say hit the bell notification, but that's one way at least to ensure that you're getting all those reminders every single time a new video posts. Without hitting that, sometimes you do miss out on some of the content this guy posts on a regular basis. Usually Monday to Friday, 2 videos a day. So there's lots of opportunities to watch new stuff, but there's lots of also opportunities to miss out on new stuff. So make sure, of course, you're doing that 2-step process. We will also, by the way, be looking at some more Hiya Toys stuff. So if that's the kind of thing you like to come back to this channel for, do please and thank you come back on a regular basis. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.